Hello everyone, and thank you for 20 subscribers. Today I'll be continuing to read Black Panther, the Young Prince. So let's continue. Chapter 13. T'Challa walked down the hallway, his thoughts still on Hunter and the conversation he had with his father. It had burned at him all night, and he still couldn't let it go. It was jealousy, plain and simple, but he didn't want to admit it. He passed the spot in the hallway where the bundle of sticks had been placed. The buzz about it had died down, but it still stuck in his mind. There was something odd about it, something strange. It was intentional and was meant to make some kind of statement, but what the statement was, T'Challa did not know. He almost tapped his Kiyomo bracelet to set a reminder to look it up when he was alone, but suddenly remembered he couldn't do that here. T'Challa entered the gym and breathed in the familiar aroma of dirty socks. The sound of balls hitting the hardwood floor was as loud as cannons. Above the noise, T'Challa heard several boys boasting. "I got mad skills. You ain't got no game. You play like your mama." T'Challa definitely wasn't looking forward to PE. Today, they'd be playing basketball, a sport T'Challa knew little about. M'Baku, on the other hand, was excited. In Wakanda, he had watched the Chicago Bulls play several times on old video files, and marveled at the players during the golden era of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. A few other boys shared his passion, and they played often. T'Challa was not one of them. He was more interested in individual sports, like archery, climbing, and swimming, ones where the only person you had to beat was yourself. T'Challa surveyed the scene around him. Gemini Jones, Deshaun, and Bicep were in the crowd, flexing muscles and taunting other students, until Coach Blevlin's whistle rang throughout the gym. "All right," he called out. "Two teams, red and white. Pick your own side." Everyone scrambled to a large cardboard box in the center of the gym. For a moment, T'Challa didn't know what was happening until several jerseys were pulled out. He walked over and picked up a white jersey from the floor. M'Baku chose red. A few minutes later, after much pushing and shoving, which was only quieted by the intervention of Mr. Blevlin, the teams were assembled. "Ah," M'Baku said, eyeing the jersey in T'Challa's hand. "Prepare to lose." T'Challa smirked and put the white jersey over his t-shirt. Gemini Jones and his friends were on M'Baku's team. "Okay," Mr. Blevlin said. "You all know the rules. No fouling and no elbows. Jump ball!" The ball went up in the air and was retrieved by a tall boy on T'Challa's team. T'Challa didn't even know what position he was playing. Suddenly, the ball was flying in his direction. Someone had passed it to him. He threw out his arms in a reflex motion and caught it. It was unfamiliar. It felt unfamiliar in his hands, like a large stone or giant cake. He let it drop to the floor to dribble, and Coach Blevlins blew his whistle. "That's what we call a double dribble, Mr. Charles. And I'm pretty sure I caught a little traveling in there, too." T'Challa didn't even know what he had done wrong. The ball was passed in to M'Baku, who stood at the edge of the court. He bounced it a few times, walking, and then took off at a run. T'Challa was amazed. He seemed like he was born for it, a natural. He crossed the ball through his legs, spun away from an opposing player, then charged toward the net. He jumped and swish. Cheers went up from his teammates. Coach Blevins nodded in approval. "Looks like we've got a new point guard." A few players clapped M'Baku on the back. Gemini Jones was one of them. "Not bad, Africa," he said. M'Baku raised his hand for a high five, which Gemini returned. Later that day, T'Challa sat in study hall and pondered a chess move. He tapped his finger on the carved wooden knight, one of his favorite pieces. He was distracted. After the basketball game in P.E., M'Baku had hung back with Gemini and his friends, laughing and joking. What was that all about? T'Challa wondered. Your move, Zeke said, moving his queen. T'Challa immediately pounced and captured with the knight. What the? Zeke moaned, leaning in and staring at the board. How'd you do that? Like this, T'Challa said, and made the move again. Zeke shook his head. He brushed a hand through his close-cropped hair. Want to play again? He asked. T'Challa checked his watch. Zeke's brown eyes grew wide as saucers. Hey, he said, let me see that. T'Challa had been so concerned with not revealing the true nature of his Kiyomo bracelet that he'd forgotten that his watch was even more unusual. It didn't look like an ordinary watch. It was a silver cuff about 2 inches wide, with an opaque black screen embedded into the surface. T'Challa hesitated. He pushed up his sweater and thrust out his arm. Zeke nudged his glasses up and stared at the device on T'Challa's wrist. Where's the numbers? He asked, perplexed. I don't see anything. T'Challa peered around the room. They were at a corner table in the back. He laid the tip of his index finger against the glossy black screen. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the screen burst into color with swirling numerals and symbols. Zeke looked on in amazement as a small 3-dimensional projection rose in the air, showing the time and date. The letters and numbers looked solid, as if they could be picked up. Zeke reached out a tentative hand. T'Challa swiped his hand through the image, which then vanished. Zeke's mouth hung open. Where in the heck did you get that? T'Challa paused and looked around. Thankfully, no one else had seen his little display of Wakandan tech. I had it custom made. Zeke raised a skeptical eyebrow. Custom made? Where? T'Challa cursed himself. What was he thinking? Back home, he said. I had it made in Kenya. Humph, Zeke said. Interesting. T'Challa swallowed hard and promised himself to be more careful in the future.